Good afternoon. Relativity is a web-based platform. It runs over the HTTPS protocol and 128-bit secure sockets layer. This is the same encryption that banks and financial institutions use to host personal data online. Now, a few other quick notes about security. Relativity requires strong passwords, including mixed case, letters, numbers, and symbols. Also, with the content being viewed on the native file viewer or the TIFF image viewer, everything is streamed directly from the server onto the memory on the local machine. There's nothing written to the temporary internet cache directory or to the hard drive. We can also lock down reviewers by local IP address, so even if you have a bunch of contract attorneys who should only be able to access Relativity on site, but you also have a bunch of partners that you want to be able to access Relativity from anywhere with an internet connection, we can provide that level of security. Finally, Relativity provides two-factor authentication, and if you have an enterprise installation of Relativity, it even integrates with Active Directory to provide single sign-on. So now I'm going to log into Relativity as a power user with a lot of bells and whistles turned on. I'm going to be demoing a lot of functionality at first, such as reviewing native files, coding, redacting, tagging, plus some browsing and searching as well. At the close of the demo, I'll log back in as a more basic reviewer, show you exactly how Relativity can really slim down to meet the needs of a more contractor basic reviewer. So first I'm going to log in as reviewer 1. When I log into Relativity, I'm presented with a workspace list, which is a list of all the repositories that the user has access to. The security in Relativity is highly granular, so when we grant and deny rights to users and groups from anything as large as a case and all the documents within it, something as small as an individual document, some coding data or metadata about the document, annotation layers or redactions to a document, or even features of the application. There's no administrative end user interface in Relativity. It's one seamless application, and we simply grant or deny permissions to our users based on what they need to be efficient in the system and do their job. This gives firms the ability to control their own destiny with respect to administrative features. For instance, you have the ability to add new coding forms or new options to coding forms. You can run productions within Relativity, even if you're using it through a hosted instance. This gives you the same level of control that you traditionally would have only had in an in-house installation. So I'm going to log into the Salt versus Pepper demo case. Relativity employs a tab-based metaphor for organizing different sections of the application, and by default I'm bounced into the Documents tab, which is where the bulk of the review will occur. If I have access to more administrative features, or the integrated production suite, for example, there will be more tabs across the top here. When I don't have these permissions, the tabs simply disappear from context, so I'm not even aware that they exist. This is a persistent idea within Relativity. When users don't have permissions to something, we're not going to show them grayed out options. Instead, we simply remove the options entirely so that they're not aware that they exist. We find that you can have reviewers up and productive in Relativity in as little as 10 to 15 minutes of training by presenting them only with the options that they need to be efficient and to do their jobs. So on this main screen, there's a lot of functionality that I'm going to skip over for now. I'm going to drill right into a document. This is the core reviewer interface in Relativity. Note that I can jump back to the document list at any time by clicking this tab in the upper left. I can also, up at the upper right, have some options for my display. I can show the documents above the document list above the document for a more concordance look and feel. I also have the ability to undock the record for multi-monitor review, or I can switch the coding pane from right to left. In the upper left-hand corner, I have an indication of the record that I am viewing. In this case, it's AS01. You'll notice my file icon gives me a visual indication of the kind of record being displayed in my native file viewer. In this instance, we have an envelope, so we know it's an email. You'll notice that the cursor changes from an arrow to a hand, indicating that I have access to download this document locally, but only if I've been granted that right. In fact, depending on the security requirements of the case or the user, we can really lock down the system. You can prevent users from downloading a file, printing a document locally, copying text from the viewer, or even running a print screen. So if you have a security-sensitive client that doesn't want any information to escape the contract reviewer's workstation, we can absolutely provide that level of security. In the upper right-hand corner, I have a collaboration tool. I'm able to email a hyperlink of this record to another member of the review team. If I were to click on the envelope icon, it would fire up Outlook on my machine with the URL in the body and the control number in the subject line. When another member of my review team clicks on that hyperlink, it would be able to authenticate Relativity, and assuming they have the rights to Relativity itself, the case, and the document, they would be bounced right into the core review interface and the document in question. If they didn't have all the necessary permissions, that link wouldn't do them any good. The series of radio buttons above the document store the different versions of the document in Relativity. Right now we're looking at this record in the native file viewer. I'll come back to that in a minute. I can also look at this document in its original native application as a TIFF of the document, and that's whether we're doing some TIFFing on the fly within Relativity, if it's a paper-based collection that was scanned and coded ahead of time, or if it's a smaller electronic collection that made sense to go to TIFF before review. I can also view the extracted text or OCR associated with the record. Lastly, every time this document is produced, it stores a produced copy alongside the original file for quick, easy reference. I'll come back and talk a little bit more about that later in the demo as well. For now, let's go back to the native file viewer. Kcura licensed the technology from Oracle Stellent called Outside In. It's the same technology you may be familiar with from a program called QuickView Plus. It allows us to get a high-fidelity static rendering of a file on the fly without the need to convert to TIFF, PDF, or HTML behind the scenes. So we can give users the speed and control that they're used to in a TIFF-based review without the additional time and cost normally associated with those conversions. Because we have licensed the technology and really integrated it with the platform, Relativity lets users interact with native files in richer ways that would not be able to do in other systems that convert to low resolution TIFF or HTML behind the scenes. For example, I can go in and copy text out of the viewer and copy it right into a web browser. Or you can access Relativity Analytics, which is a concept searching, categorization, and clustering right within the application. You'll also note here that Relativity terms are already highlighted for us. This concept is referred to as persistent highlighting. Up here is the highlighted tree, and it allows us to feed Relativity a list of terms, maybe a list of potentially privileged words or key players in a case, and have them keyed out to the reviewers regardless of whether or not they're actually user-generated search criteria. These can also be color-coded for instant contextual recognition. Maybe magenta here is privileged, and green designates the key player. This highlighting tree allows us to control which hits they see on a term or set a level and provide instant contextual recognition as to which hits are contained within a record and the frequency of those hits. These are completely securable from user to user and from group to group. Now I'm going to shuffle through a couple of common file types and show you how they render in the native file viewer. Here we have an Excel spreadsheet. Notice that I still maintain some control over the document. I can resize columns, get persistent highlighting, and I can use these blue arrows to navigate from hit to hit. So if I do a keyword search and it turns 1,200 rows down into this Excel file, I can use the blue arrow simply to jump straight to my hit and have it keyed in for me instead of having to wade through the Excel nightmare. Here next we have a PowerPoint presentation, and see that I still have my persistent highlighting, and I can use the blue arrows to jump from hit to hit, which will take me through the various slides in which those hits occur. We also have a Word document that's in Korean. Relativity is fully Unicode compliant, so you can load, search, display foreign languages, double byte languages, and CJK characters. You can get the persistent highlighting, tagging, coding, and you can copy foreign words out of the viewer, paste them, and submit them to a search engine, and TIFF them. All of the same functionality that you get with an English language document is available with foreign language documents in Relativity. And then one of the pain points for native file review is that sometimes these files contain embedded content, and because the native file viewer only shows you the finalized version of the document, it's not always clear to the reviewer that embedded content exists. In Relativity, as you can see here, we actually configure the system to throw an alert to the reviewer to let them know that this kind of data is present. And so here the alert says, this document has tracked changes, comments, please view the image. So I click OK and flip to the image. And now you can see we're already able to tip the document on the fly with the track changes and the comments included, and I can make the coding decisions from here. Are there any questions about the Relativity native file viewer before we move on to redaction and annotation?